I'm Dr. Peter McCullough, and this is Focal Points. Title of our presentation today is Robert F. Kennedy, Health and Human Services, the MAHA Coalition announced the new food pyramid. And the first thing you'll notice is that this pyramid, which is normally, has a base at the bottom and has, a small pinnacle at the top, it's reversed. The pyramid has been turned upside down. Everybody's talking about it, so I think it's a lot of fun to discuss it and weigh in on it. Now, as an internist and a cardiologist and an epidemiologist, I have been in the business of studying nutritional epidemiology. I've been formally trained in it, as well as advising patients and friends and families on diet for many, many years, because there is a dietary hypothesis for chronic diseases that's pretty strong. There's no doubt about it. And so as we work our way through the food pyramid, keep in mind that we do believe changes in what you eat and what people eat in general does relate to chronic disease, for sure. And so positive changes almost certainly will lead to lessening degrees of chronic disease, and that's going to be good. But let's work our way through it. Human beings, Homo sapiens, are considered omnivores, meaning we can eat both plants and vegetables, fruits, as well as meats. And our teeth are designed as a blend. So we have incisors at the front that can tear meat. Now, not to the level of, a cheetah, what have you. We're not a complete carnivore by design. Many have said that our teeth have evolved over time since the advent of cooking. But even if we look at teeth of prehistoric man, even before the ability to generate fire, we always look like we were omnivores by my analysis. And following the analysis of the late William Roberts, a cardiac pathologist who's one of the most published individuals in the history of medicine. I had the honor of officing with him for nearly a decade. So William Roberts always pointed out that if anything, the human teeth are more designed to be herbivores, that we have mainly molars that are designed to, grind plants and other vegetative material. But suffice it to say, we're omnivores, and the new food pyramid acknowledges omnivores. But since the advent of, the agrarian type of living, the domestication of plants and animals, that's where we saw the rise of all kinds of problems if people lived long enough. And I think largely it's because we've gravitated to kind of the easiest, most potable, most portable forms of calories, and that is starch. Starch is, wheat, potatoes, rice. Starch is just sugar molecules linked together. And so because this could be dried and stored for a long period of time, and going back thousands and thousands of years, even breaking bread is in the Bible. Starch-based diets, which were largely Asian, Middle Eastern, and then Western diets, I think largely were okay, but they weren't oriented towards longevity. And clearly, when calories became liberated and became more abundant, they are obesogenic. There's no doubt about it. Do you know about 60% of calories that people take in each day in general come from starch, which are just sugar molecules linked together? So, the classic article of starch is a slice of bread or a bagel or a muffin. These have little or no essential minerals or vitamins, are a poor source of fiber, and are simply sugar molecules linked together. I've always said, we could revive a diabetic in a diabetic coma by crumpling up some croutons or a graham cracker in their mouth, and the body starts to take that starch and generate sugar. Now, so starch is clearly now de-emphasized in the new pyramid. So let's give credit there to Robert F. Kennedy and the MAHA people who advised him on diet. So I've told individuals, I think now for 30 years or more, stop eating starch. That means no bread, no rice, no potatoes, no baked goods, cookies, crackers, chips. All of that needs to go. It's not essential, and it's just extra calories. So if people say, what about whole grain? They start to negotiate. Don't even need that. We don't need whole grain. This is very important. And remember, animals out in the wilderness don't bake bread. They don't. You can see what they eat. It's not refined grains. Even whole grain is refined. So eliminating starch, important. Sugar, again, natural forms of sugar are addictive. If we were to take sugar and put it in water and put it out on a deer stand in the woods, quickly the deer would become addicted to sugar. Mammals become addicted to sugar. So eliminating forms of sugar from the diet, sugary drinks, even concentrated juices are sugary, candies, all the sources of sugar that come in through, through all our confections, for instance, and our processed foods, getting rid of sugar. So we actually have two S's, starches and sugar. Get rid of them. Now, the third S is, I think, where Robert F. Kennedy and the MAHA group are off track, and that's saturated fat. So saturated fat is largely animal fat that is not essential. There's no essential fatty acids there. And the saturated fat, comes as a byproduct of eating meat or butter or pork, for instance, and poultry. We get saturated fat. There's about 1,500 studies that demonstrate that saturated fat directly stimulates the liver to produce cholesterol. It's a one-to-one relationship. There's no doubt about it. So there's no free lunch. You can't, go on a high saturated fat diet without elevating the cholesterol, and elevations in cholesterol directly contribute to atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease or coronary disease. And so that's the reason why low-fat diets have been advised for coronary heart disease patients for a long period of time, because they reduce rates of heart attack and stroke. And that's not going to change. So the three villains in the diet are sugars, starches, and saturated fat. If we get rid of them or minimize them, we're talking about weight loss, health, freedom from diabetes, freedom from coronary heart disease, freedom from risks of cancers. We know saturated fats stimulate the risk for breast cancer and female reproductive tract cancer. I mean, we're in great shape if we get rid of the three S's, sugar, starches, and saturated fat, or greatly minimize them. And so people start to negotiate. Well, Dr. McCullough, how low should I go on my saturated fat? And I said, well, what I try to do is keep it less than 10 grams a day. Well, how do you interpret that? Okay, I had some coffee this morning, a couple grams of saturated fat. I'll have salad, some salad dressing, maybe another gram. Dinner tonight, I don't think there's going to be any saturated fat in it. My wife's a terrific cook. So I'll probably be at 3 or 4 grams of saturated fat. Fine. What if I went out for a Robert F. Kennedy Morton Steakhouse dinner? I'd probably be at about 20 grams of saturated fat. So I'd be about double where I want to be. How about a Texas Whataburger and fries? 60 grams of saturated fat. How about a Cheesecake Factory cheesecake? Ooh, that could be as high as 100 grams of saturated fat, 10 times what I'd want to take in a day. How about several slices of pizza? Probably 40 grams of saturated fat. So listen, the inverted pyramid is great, but we need to think about this. High quality sources of protein are in this order: fish, beans, nuts, egg whites, non-fat dairy, and then, very limited beef and chicken. I don't recommend pork to anybody at this point in time because of the genetic vaccines used in pork. And then fresh fruits and vegetables, unlimited. And we try to eliminate or dramatically limit sugars, starches, and saturated fat. So what does that mean? People say, well, Dr. McCullough, how do you interpret the new pyramid? I said, it's fine. The pyramid, I would give the new group in Washington. And, they didn't seek advice from me, or it's obvious they didn't seek advice from the cardiovascular community or any types of scientific dietetic committee. They kind of did it on their own, which is fine. I would give them a B. Now, how would they get an A? Listen, that pyramid is fine, but let's get rid of the porkies, the beefies, the butteries. Let's get rid of the cheesies. If you see a big, heavy-set person, you say he's kind of beefy or kind of porky. Well, the reason why you say that is because of all the saturated fat intake. So let's get saturated fat out of the new Maha food pyramid, and let's have high-quality sources of protein: fish, beans, nuts, egg whites, non-fat dairy, occasional chicken and beef, and fresh fruits and vegetables. People have said, well, Dr. McCullough, there's new evidence to show that we can eat as much saturated fat as possible. I said, listen, the new evidence, which is largely sloppy dietary epidemiology or reanalyses of very old data like the Minnesota Heart Study, do not overturn hundreds and hundreds of strict dietary feeding studies, analyses, biochemical analyses done in the cardiovascular field that clearly link saturated fat to atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. They don't overturn it. A lot of that's confirmation bias by people who are keto carnivores. They want to justify to themselves to eat as much saturated fat as possible. Listen, I have nothing against a keto carnivore diet. Have high quality sources of protein without the red meat, the pork, the butter, and the cheese. Just get that out of there, and then fresh fruits and vegetables unlimited. You're going to be fine. That's the recipe to be free of coronary heart disease, stroke, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, as well as reduce the risks of cancer. What we don't want to do is take, these three major macronutrients and emphasize one and then try to put down the others. We need to put down all three. People do this all the time. They say, well, here's a diet where you can eat as much sugar as you want to, just don't eat the starch or the saturated fat. Or here, we don't want you to eat saturated fat, but eat as much starch and sugar as you want to. No, it's all three. Let's get rid of them: sugars, starches, and saturated fat. So in summary, I'm Dr. Peter McCullough. I'm an internist and cardiologist in practice. I've published substantially across the literature. I know it cold. And at this point in time, the inverted dietary pyramid gets a B. How we could move to an A+ is let's get rid of the beef, pork, cheese, and butter out of there, or dramatically limit it. Then it would be a very desirable food pyramid. The best nutritional epidemiology is done on the people who keep the strictest diets for a long period of time, and that group is the Seventh-day Adventists. They are vegan. They eat no animal proteins or fats, none whatsoever, for the course of their lives. Our new National Nutrition Advisor, Dr. Ben Carson, is a Seventh-day Adventist. I've had personal conversations with him about it. They're among the longest-lived healthy people alive on earth. And they have the lowest risk of coronary heart disease, diabetes, metabolic syndrome. You can't beat their approach. You may say, Dr. McCullough, I can't be a vegan or a vegetarian. Well, fine. I can't either. I have some fish in my diet, seafood in my diet, and I do have some occasional meat, but it's certainly not every day. And I keep that saturated fat less than 10 grams a day. That's a good mark to strive for. So that's my summary, and this is Focal Points. Spend some time on the new inverted dietary pyramid. It's a good discussion point. I think it's fine to talk about from a theoretical perspective. But when I go out to a restaurant, and I know you do it too, the first thing we mention is the menu. We don't think about a dietary pyramid when we approach our diet in everyday life. So let's take it for what it is. I'm Dr. Peter McCullough. Thank you so much for listening. This is Focal Points.